Man, this is definitely the part of explaining FNAF I have been looking forward to the least. Now, when I started my short series and going out to explain the full necessary core lore of FNAF in the hopes of making a FNAF for dummies, as you would say, I always knew I would have to explain the lovely substance known as Remnant. That lovely soul-like substance. Here's the thing about explaining Remnant. Other than Ultimate Custom Night, Pizzeria Simulator, and FNAF 5, out of all the FNAF games, those are the only 3 games Remnant is really referenced in. But here comes the tricky part about Remnant. It's been in the series for as long as the series has existed, technically, because Remnant is just the soul in physical form, and we've always understood to a point that most of the animatronics are haunted ever since FNAF 1. So, yeah, this is kind of where we put ourselves in a difficult situation, because technically Remnant's always been in the series, but also technically it's really only extended lore that talks about it. And because we're making a FNAF for Dummies series, this puts me in the difficult position of how do we discuss Remnant on this channel. Now, I initially figured maybe I would make a short, explain it all in 60 seconds, just be like, hey, this is something that's always existed, but really only an extended lore. Is it an important point? Remnant is an important point in the main series, but truth be told, if you didn't acknowledge Remnant, none of the games would change. Like, literally, I went most of my life watching through FNAF without ever understanding what Remnant was, and the lore barely changed for me post knowing it. So you can probably understand why I'm in such a weird position here. Because for something that is so vital to the series of making everything make sense, it is also some of the least important stuff in the entire series somehow. I don't know how Scott managed to make something that is the core focus of the series, but yet is also so inconsequential that the story really wouldn't change without it. Because at the end of the day, with or without Remnant, William Afton still would have became the man behind the slaughter. He still would have, you know, the missing people. We all know how that goes, because if I say the actual age of these people, YouTube won't like it. But also, regardless of the fact Afton would have still became the man behind the slaughter, the core problem also is, this is supposedly the driving force of why he does every single thing in the entire series. Yes, I am not joking. For something that wouldn't have changed the fact he would have went on a killing rampage, it's still somehow the core focus, and it drives me up a damn wall. In fact, my earlier sentiment about it showing up in Ultimate Custom Night is technically wrong, because while Ultimate Custom Night ultimately relies on Remnant to work, because it's a technical afterlife within the soul, and it's not the real afterlife, because, well, Afton comes back. But yeah, it only showed up in Sister Location, Pizzeria Sim, and Special Delivery, which is an AR game. Not even a VR game, an AR game. And if you want to see how inconsequential this game is overall, here's a few seconds of Markiplier playing it. It really isn't much of a game. It literally was the definition of a tablet game that does virtually nothing at all. I mean, to be fair though, the game does look kind of cool for the fact that you get to play FNAF essentially in your own house. So, I'll give it that much. Playing FNAF in your own house, literally, quite sounds awesome. It sounds quite awesome, like, I can't lie, but, oh hey, and there's Remnant. You literally just saw what Remnant looks like. I'm glad I brought this clip up now. Now that we have, the weird backstory of Remnant aside and why it even exists in the first place, what really was the driving introduction, at least in retrospect? Well, that's technically the end of FNAF 4. Because in FNAF 4, we all know what happens to Crying Child. Was that the bite of 83? It was the bite of 83, actually. And after the child goes away, William Afton supposedly can tell, like, hey, he's still in there. He's still in Fredbear. Fredbear is acting weird. And William Afton puts together the fact that Crying Child is still inside of Fredbear. And so this is what causes sister location, technically. Or, well, honestly, you can put either one in either place and it still makes almost the same amount of sense. And that is where we get the Funtime animatronics. Yay! Arguably my least favorite. Not from a do I like them, not like them perspective. They're my least favorite in terms of what animatronics would I not want to be put in a room with. And while all of them are definitely on the list, the Funtimes are the worst. Literally the worst. Like a mixture of just robots and hauntings. But hauntings under one singular person. Yeah. And this one singular person would not only go on to become the secondary antagonist for the whole series, but would also be the thing that allows William Afton to discover what Remnant even is. Because, oh boy, when William Afton makes the Funtime animatronics to, take people, we'll put it that way, to take people of a certain age group, definitely not below 21, guess what happens? We all know what happens to Elizabeth, right? Circus Baby? She's still here? Yeah, Circus Baby takes Elizabeth. And then Afton discovers this way too late. And then that, in sister location, is the remnant for how Afton figures this all out. Because while Fredbear was the indicator for Afton that something is happening with souls and the like, he didn't know for sure. And that's why he needed to make animatronics to take people, and then the animatronics took the wrong person. Again, ironic, right? Like, you couldn't take enough hints after Fredbear, huh? But anyway, so that happens to Elizabeth, and then this is where Afton figures out how Remnant works. And well, this is where we get to the weirdest part of the timeline. And, man, I need a drink for this one. What did you think I meant? But here's the big thing. This is where we get to the part of the FNAF franchise where I like to call the overlaps. You see, this is where the games end and begin, but certain parts of the games happen at certain points to where it overlaps with different games in the franchise. So you have a timeline where technically it goes how many games, but then certain parts of the games are thrown all the way back into different parts of the timeline. So this is where we have to bring up FNAF fucking 3 and FNAF 1. Because these events happen somehow before sister location, technically. So, in FNAF 3, we are shown through mini-games that William Afton disassembled parts of the animatronics from FNAF 1. Yeah, you're seeing what the problem here is now, because FNAF 3 indicates events of FNAF 1, post FNAF 1, happened during sister location, even though the events of FNAF 1 happens after. Yeah, you're seeing the problem here, aren't you? And this is essentially why a lot of people can hate Remnant. I don't hate Remnant, but I understand why people hate Remnant, because Remnant literally made Scott Cawthon retroactively put events from FNAF 1 during sister location / before sister location, and then only showed us this during FNAF 3, but we wouldn't know this until after Sister Location got released. And this is where you're seeing why the timeline gets thrown out of whack, because of Remnant. All because of Remnant. We have events shown in FNAF 3 that happened in FNAF 1 that we wouldn't know when they happened till the 5th game, which is Sister Location, and then we had to put those events into Sister Location, which in of itself is already a prequel to the whole series. Did all of that sink in? Did all of that make sense? Because this is after a few takes, this is the best way I can figure out how to explain this. This is like my 12th take trying to explain this right now. I hope you appreciate this. But I bring all this up because this leads us into the biggest clusterfuck of the whole series, Funtime Fredbear. Specifically Funtime Fredbear. Mostly because of how, demented he acts. Nobody can deny the fact that the only animatronic besides Circus Baby that shows any signs of awareness during the events of Sister Location is easily Funtime Fredbear. Like, and here's why. So, again, air quotes here because this is the best we have until Scott gets off his ass and writes a whole compendium confirming everything, which probably will never happen in my lifetime, at least. Well, actually, should at that point, I think his kids would have to do it for him because yeah, he'd be dead and I'd be dead. Anyway, so that remnant that Afton got from dismantling the animatronics, which, by the way, is what happened in the cutscene. Sorry if I didn't portray that accurately enough during that initial whole, explaining how it works in a timeline rant. So, he dismantles the animatronics. He takes the remnant from these animatronics, mixes them all together, and this is how we get Funtime Fredbear acting like a demented, jerk all night. For 5 nights. And why he is mostly the reason why you're paranoid, honestly. And this is where it gets even more messed up when you remember Funtime Fredbear mixes with all the other Funtime animatronics, becomes Ennard by combining with Circus Baby too. So you have an incomplete beast of Fredbear. Well, Funtime Freddy, I mean. Funtime Freddy. And then you have Circus Baby, who is just Elizabeth Afton, who is devoted to... Yeah. And then Circus Baby gets kicked out of Ennard, and she becomes Scrap Baby, and then we get Molten Freddy, which is what leads us into the game where Remnant becomes the big selling point, Pizzeria Simulator. Yes, and you rescue Molten Freddy. Yes, rescue. You literally treat him like a poor and abandoned puppy behind a shelter. Literally. You find him behind an alleyway, you drag his ass inside, and eventually you drag William Afton in too, in the form of Scrap Trap, Ash Trap, Dumbass Trap, I Always Come Back Trap. And by doing these things, and then by doing an Easter egg in the office, you figure out what Remnant is in the games. Technically, anyway. And all I gotta say is... Ah! And I say that scream because if you weren't reading the books, this is how you figured out what Remnant was. Yes, I kid you not. Remnant was mostly introduced into the books. This is why I was going over why it's really only important in extended lore, because with or without it, the games really wouldn't make a difference. You would have all the games still, it's just that he wouldn't be looking into how souls work during all the games. Which, I get it. It's the reason how we even get into Ultimate Custom Night anyway. Like, it's obvious what he was doing with all this. All of this pushes into Ultimate Custom Night. That's obvious. You need everything to explain Ultimate Custom Night. Because without the whole lore up until this point, Ultimate Custom Night wouldn't make sense, and we would never have an Ultimate Custom Night. I can fully see in retrospect why everything happened the way it happened. But, was all this worth it just to get to Ultimate Custom Night? Was all these inserts into the lore, making the timeline break, was everything worth it just to get us to Ultimate fucking Custom Night? In retrospect, anyway. Like, we didn't know that's where it was going. Even Scott didn't know that's where it was going. Keep in mind, a lot of this was very much, how could I put this? Leap of faith logic. It happens as it happens. You know, you gotta take that leap of faith, man, to quote Assassin's Creed. What can I say? It's just what happened. You know, it's like when you're writing a book. You know the beginning, you know the end, you don't know the middle. That's the truth. As someone who has written several extended what ifs right now on this channel, as someone who is writing Tales of the Red Rose right now, I will testify that heavily. You know the beginning, you know the end, you don't know the middle. I'm just really questioning if the middle was worth getting to the end. Because I really gotta stop and wonder, if you were only going through the games. Now thank God I'm a nerd junkie. I'm a lore junkie. I am also a nerd junkie. Nerds hit me up in the chat down below, am I right? But thank God I'm a lore junkie. So in combination with the games, I'm also consuming all the side media. I went out of my way to watch the movie recently. Well, everyone did that. Who doesn't fucking love the movie? But if you're not consuming extended lore, this is all you got in the games. And I can only imagine how frustrating this must have been. To have the timeline broken up and made so hectic and so hard to understand, to the point where I think I have a 20+ minute video just going on a rant, not even an explanation anymore of just how all this worked in the timeline. I really pity the people who were just playing the games. I really genuinely do. And now we could go on and on to the extended purpose of what Remnant plays in the series now, but I think overall you guys can make a lot of assumptions. It's really just the driving force nowadays. It what makes everything click, it what makes everything whir. Sorry, my brain is fried, so my grammar is a little bit fucked up right now. And really, that's as simple as it gets. It's just the driving force nowadays. It's that thing in the background that makes everything click into place and makes the whole series go. And I guess in that regard, it was overall worth it, but in the moment, it probably wasn't for a lot of people. Let me know what you think about Remnant in the comments below. Let me know if you have any additional lore you personally want to dump into this. This is all I wanted to talk about. This is all you really need to understand when you get to the simplicity of it, or lack thereof, because if it was simple, the video wouldn't be this long. But overall, I have been Johnny Von Dude. I hope you enjoyed this lore video. I hope you enjoyed this addition into FNAF for Dummies. And let me tell you, this is definitely going to be interesting to see when I eventually get to the end of the lore, which we're nowhere close to. But we're going to eventually get to it at one point. I'm going to obviously complement all this video into one compilation. And we're going to have how many hours long of a mixture of shorts, gameplay footage, me talking. And it's just going to be the entire lore of Five Nights at Freddy's for Dummies. But let me know what you think of Remnant down below. And I'll see you all next time. Peace out, everybody.